Good morning, Dan and Amy. And so this case of the Empire star who was allegedly assaulted, a couple of developments yesterday, including a video snapshot of two silhouettes that were in the vicinity around the time that Jussie says he was attacked.
Yeah, and police said that they tracked Smollett's movements that night. And so they confirmed that the video shows Smollett walking across the street from those two possible persons of interest. But then police said in the video he walks out of frame for about 1 minute, then suddenly reappears on camera wearing a rope like a necktie. Not a noose, but just a rope that was tied up like, you know, how you guys wear your ties.
He was apparently on the phone with his business manager when the attack happened. The business manager says he heard somebody make a racial epithet. Then he went to his manager's condo or apartment after the attack, went past the doorman, and that's when they called police, and police responded at that time. Now, he won't provide his cell phone to police to confirm the story.
And the manager won't either.
Right, so they're just
that's a problem.
Just offering statements. The other thing, as we mentioned yesterday, according to the police report, 40 minutes after they called, the police responded to the apartment
of the manager. Yeah.
And Jussie is still wearing the makeshift noose. We don't know if there's been any corroboration of the assertion that there was some chemical that was thrown on him.
Yeah, well, they've taken the noose and his sweatshirt that he was wearing, which, by the way, had a salt stain on it. Not his coat, but his sweatshirt did. They've taken both of those in for a separate investigation. They're going to go through that and see if they can lift any prints and see if there's any bleach on the sweatshirt or what alleged possible substance might be on it.
And remember, the other allegation made in the second conversation with police, not the first.
Yeah, remember, not the first time he was interviewed by police.
Is that the assailants exclaimed, "This is MAGA country," when they attacked him. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking along the lines.
Where were you, Dan?
Well, no, I've got an alibi. Kidding. But and I wouldn't do anything like that, obviously. But the other thing you're thinking is, what would Maxine Waters have to say about this, obviously, because you want to be on the side of right. So No Justice, No Peace, Maxine has weighed in on this, and if you're thinking along with Maxine, you know where this goes. This is all Trump's fault.
I know Jussie. I love him. Family is a friend of mine. I know his sisters. I met his mom. And I called already to Jazz, one of the sisters, to talk to her about what's happening, what's going on. So she said he's okay. He's out of the hospital. And, we didn't talk about it much more than that. But I was on my way to Chicago to see about him. You know what I'm saying? I love him. He's a fantastic human being. He's so giving. He shows up at all the community events. You know, he does a lot working with the community. But he comes from that kind of family. And so I'm pleased that he's doing okay. But we have to understand this is happening for a reason. Why all of a sudden do we have people unable to study while black, unable to mow a lawn while black, unable to have a picnic while black, and being attacked? It's coming from the President of the United States. He's dog whistling every day. He's separating and dividing. And he is basically emboldening those folks who feel this way, maybe never said it, never talked about it, never could act it out, but now they're on it. And when I heard about what had happened to Jussie, and I heard they put a rope around him and they poured bleach on him and stuff, I was absolutely very upset. So I'm feeling better that he's okay, and I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Now, President Trump has not been named as suspect in this assault yet, but we haven't made out the individuals, the two silhouettes in that freeze frame of a video. So we'll see. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Paul Huebl. He is a former Chicago police officer, now a licensed private investigator. He's also done a bit of investigative journalism work. And he's out in L.A. now, got out of Chicago. He is Paul Huebl, as I mentioned. Paul, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Do we have Paul?
I know we have Paul.
Okay.
I just talked to Paul. Where's
Let's
Paul?
go ahead and put him on the air then. Technical tape. There's Paul. Paul?
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
The volume kind of dropped, but
Okay.
speak loud.
Okay, Paul. So you have followed this case of the alleged assault of Mr. Smollett. What's your reaction? Where does this investigation go with 12 Chicago police detectives assigned to it?
Well, I think that this is a very troubled young man. Let me begin by saying that when I was in Chicago, I lived at Marina City, which is right there in the area where this was alleged to have happened. That's number one. Number two, my Chicago police buddies that are close to the rank and file that were covering this thing or investigating it, this case had a strong odor to them that it was a publicity stunt because of the absolute lack of meaningful evidence other than what they were told. They looked at miles of video footage, and there really is nothing that shows that he was in any kind of a conflict with anyone, period. And, there was what looks to me like a couple, a man and a woman, in the photographs, the shadowy figures. The person on the right has rounded shoulders and really has the appearance and gait of a woman, and they're certainly not wearing red Trump caps or anything like that. And then WLS, they released a graphic that says that he's out of frame for a minute, and all these things that were alleged could not happen in a minute. This is as far as I can determine, the only thing that makes sense is this is a twisted publicity stunt. And being out in L.A., I have been watching the entertainment community just falling all over each other, decrying this deplorable attack, and, like it really happened. But the other thing, too, I'm noticing is that the mainstream media, who embraced this thing in the very beginning, like it really happened, are now using words like alleged attack, and they're backing off. But, again, this thing has a strong odor. And more importantly, the temperature in Chicago at that particular time is not conducive to troublemakers being out wandering around. And the other thing that I've been told by officers is that they believe that Jesse was actually out trying to score drugs at that hour of the morning, and that was really why he was out, because it really doesn't make any sense for him to be out in that kind of a weather. It's different if he had to work. He's driving a cab.
Well,
he's not.
Well, okay, but
he did go to his Subway shop because he said he was hungry.
Yeah, right. So there's video of him at the Subway sandwich shop, and also, I know this is hearsay from your discussion with Chicago police officers. I understand it, but there's no evidence to suggest that at this point. So we sort of want to stick where the evidence is. There's no evidence that he was buying drugs. There's at least nothing that's been released by police.
Well, it was basically conjecture. In other words, they're trying to figure out what is he doing out there, and maybe that Subway was a meeting point for something to happen. One thing's for sure is there may or may not be a drug screen on him if he actually went to the hospital, because certainly the doctors would be wondering about that, or if he's having a psychotic event, or who knows, but they're going to look at it very carefully, or they should.
Well, let's talk about his past tweets. They've been very anti-Trump, and they're so vulgar we can't even read them on the air.
they're despicable. I mean, he's a Trump hater, and and the other thing too that's very disturbing was this so-called statement. This is MAGA country. Wasn't made to the police. It was made by him to TMZ in an apparent effort to trump up publicity. And then the cops wind up calling him back, and then he says, "Oh yeah, that happened. I forgot to tell you." Well, that really again has an odor to it. This young man really, I think, needs some serious counseling. I mean, he's way over the edge.
Well, if it is true that this was some sort of hoax or it was not what it appeared to be, I mean, he might have gotten into some sort of fracas, but it had nothing to do with two masked men, and saying something related to Trump and so on and so forth. What do you think Chicago police do on this if they don't find any suspects that fit the description and can prove that they committed the crime the way Jesse lays it out and that he was less than honest? Do they just make this go away, or do they actually pursue him for filing a false police report?
Well, Chicago has really changed, and they're very sensitive to any kind of racial issues. And I think that the powers that be are going to try to walk away from this. But certainly in my day, he'd be wearing bracelets, and, they would have conducted a much more intense interrogation of him, suggesting that he take a polygraph test and things like that. But that's not going to happen now. At least I don't believe so. And they're going to want this thing, the Chicago Police Department is going to want to make this whole thing go away. And, but realistically, if they sit down with this kid, do their job, he's going to wind up telling us that, yeah, he was a little over the edge and got carried away. Because that's what happens in these types of interrogations or interviews. And then he'll justify it, mitigate it, and that's fine. But filing a false police report or pulling a fire alarm is really the same thing. You don't do that. You don't cause first responders to go out and do these massive investigations. And I can't imagine what it costs the city to look at all that video footage that showed absolutely nothing.
Well, it never showed an attack, and that is the bottom line. I mean, there's cameras all over the place down there, and there was nothing. I mean, I don't know how they could have gone off camera and within a minute and had an attack happen. So
I don't know. The whole thing is disgraceful. Jesse's tweets speak for themselves. They're very vile and hateful. And this is a very troubled young man. I mean, it's obvious. And on Saturday in West Hollywood, which is, of course, the gay capital of Southern California, they're having a big demonstration before Jesse makes some kind of an appearance here.
With respect to your conversation with Chicago police, is there anybody who said, sort of, we don't know? There's some indications that this could be misleading at best and a hoax at worst, but there's also the possibility. There's the possibility that what he's saying is true, that it could have happened. Do you hear that from anybody inside the police department?
Nobody, except, however, the higher up you go within the department, you get to the PR section, public relations, PIOs, they're going to be very sensitive because of the racial tones here, that they're going to pretend to at least tell everybody that they kind of believe this kid. And again, they're going to want this thing to go away. It's a black guy. It's divisive. It's horrible.
And again, I believe something happened, but not as he says it happened.
Yeah, something did happen.
Something did, yeah.
And he had a dispute with somebody. And again, going back to to the conjecture of sworn officers on the scene, they believe that he got into some kind of tussle with a potential drug dealer or someone else, and it happened earlier than what he claimed happened, where there's absolutely no evidence.
He is Paul Huebl, licensed private detective. He's a former Chicago police officer and investigative journalist as well out in L.A. Paul, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, you guys have a great day and try to keep warm. It'll be about 70 degrees where I'm at.
All right, you try to keep warm too. All right, thanks, Paul.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.